Hey guys, welcome to episode 22 of the Western Movement Podcast. We have an absolutely amazing guest on today. That's probably why you guys are tuned in. So, I'm going to give her a brief intro, but we got Taya on here. Absolutely stud athlete. If you already don't know, like an insane athlete in high school, still like doing amazing things at the college level, the Division 1 college level. And we're going to dive more into that, and I'm sure she'll be really humble about her athletic career, and there's a lot more to it than just that. But welcome to the show, Taya.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited. I'm very excited.
Well, I'm so excited to have you on because I know we don't know each other super well personally, but from what I do know, you are a phenomenal human being and like just a light in people's lives. So, getting into it, I know you have finals week next week, so thanks for taking your time today to talk about whatever we're about to talk about.
Yes, you as well. You as well.
Yeah, I guess I should probably
Yeah.
take that more seriously. I'm just kidding. This is a podcast for student athletes, so
Yes.
yeah. Taya, is there anything that you want to dive into from like your high school career that I left out? Anything you want the people to know?
My freshman year, I actually was not in Rapid City my freshman year, for track at least. I moved to Hardin, Montana. Me and my mom had moved to Hardin, Montana. It was super last minute decision. It was like there was some family conflict, and so we decided to do that. And so we moved to Hardin, and I think I was only there for the track season. Like I showed up in, I think, March, and so I literally just got to the school, competed on the track team, and it was great. That was amazing. Competing with the Hardin team, and they were just so encouraging. And that's actually where I got introduced to triple jump. That's where I first started to triple jump, which is like kind of my main event now. So that's super awesome. But yeah, then I moved back in the summertime, so I kind of just did like a season of track there. I was like, hi, and then just left. But then my sophomore year obviously was COVID, so we didn't have a track season my sophomore year, and that was actually really, really difficult. That was a weird experience for everybody, obviously. So not much happened that year as far as athletics. And then my junior year, I was so excited to get back and just start doing athletics again and doing track. And so um, my junior year, I went to state, won triple jump, and then got second in long jump. And that was really insane. And also, that was the year, my junior year, I broke the central long jump record. Um, and then my senior year, went to state again, and then won triple. Um, and then I kind of started the recruitment process, committed to the Yotes, so that was super fun. But yeah, that's basically my high school career.
It's a very humble way of saying that you were absolutely dominant in the sport, but I will get more into like other things, but I do want to ask, like, when it came to your recruitment process, when did that start for you? Did you say like your end of your junior year or?
um, yeah, it was probably like the summer of my junior year, a little bit at the end, I would say. Yeah.
And did you know like the entire time you wanted to go do this in college or?
Up until like I honestly, it's such a weird thing because I didn't really think about it that much until like school started reaching out to me, and I was like, I know that I want to go to college, but I didn't know it would be such a an open opportunity for me to compete in college. So up until like the first couple of offers, I was kind of a little bit shell shocked. I was like, wow, I could actually do this in college and have like an athletic career in college, and it opened so many doors for me though. So
Was that like a personal belief thing, or like I don't know if I could actually do that, or was it like a I hadn't really seen anyone do this before me kind of thing?
um I think it was kind of a I just didn't really recognize how much I was noticed for it, besides like the people obviously on my team and my coaches and my family, but I didn't realize how um big of a deal it was to like schools, what was happening within my career. And um so I just don't think I ever thought that much about it. I just kind of like knew that I loved it, and I was enjoying my time with my coaches and my teammates, and I guess I just didn't really think other people were seeing that. So, yeah.
That's like such a big point because honestly, for most people, I think it's the other way around, where they're so stressed about what they're doing in their sport to like go play college and to make it to the next level that they don't even have like the enjoyment part of it.
Yeah.
So I know we're gonna talk about like your identity outside of sports, and honestly, it sounds like the sport was never really a part of your identity, and it sounds like you still balance and manage it really well. But did that just come from you loved doing it and you didn't have this crazy goal to go into athletics, or were you just more like, I'm gonna be really great at the thing I'm doing right now, and maybe, that will reward itself along the line instead of just stressing about that end outcome?
I honestly, I think, especially when I was in high school, I just didn't really, I mean, I worked hard and I knew that I wanted to be good at my sport, obviously, but a lot of the times, like, there's a lot of my favorite memories in track, like, I do something, one of my accomplishments, and I'm like, I can't believe I just did that. Like, I cannot believe that just happened. And I kind of just sit there and I'm like, I have no clue how I did that. And that's always been like a blessing for me to like sit there and be like, wow, I can't believe I was able to do that. And so I don't really think I don't think I ever had like really, really high standards for myself. I I honestly don't think I really set a whole lot of standards for myself either. I kind of just, like I said earlier, I just went and did what I enjoyed doing, and I was really grateful to see that a lot of the times that exceeded what I even thought I was capable of.
That's like amazing, and I hope that people listening and even I can take that more like just embrace that because you're not stressed about it. You're not like super in your head about it. You go do it and it happens and you're kind of surprised, right? And it's just like a blessing that you have that mentality and that like approach to it. But would you say that, I know your faith is important to you. Would you say that it's like, I know that I did this, but like I didn't actually do this, and you turn that glory away from yourself? Is that probably what your foundation is? Like that helps you do that?
Oh yeah, for sure. Like especially yeah. Um like I said, it's like a lot of the time I'm like, "Oh wow, that was kind of insane." And I always I know that my ability to do track is a gift from the Lord. I know that for a fact because I mean it's brought me so far, and I feel like there's just so much that I could have done more of to like secure this opportunity, but I feel like I didn't do a whole lot. I feel like a lot of that like I was led, and everything kind of just happened, and I'm still surprised that I'm here. Yeah, like a lot of what I've been able to achieve and accomplish is definitely from the Lord, cuz I don't think I don't know how I do some of this stuff, so
I love that. And honestly, that kind of leads me into, so you're in more of an individual sport and like, you do track and you have your events, and there's a lot of skill and prep that goes into your events.
mhm.
But, say you take an athlete, you played volleyball and you did other like athletics. When you're in those, how would they stay like grounded?
And thanks for using volleyball as an example because that's really the only
Absolutely.
like team sport I did. I think just controlling what you can control, and also just acknowledging that if you're doing your part and you're doing your best, that you have to know what you bring to your team, and that's enough for your team, and that when you're doing your best, like kind of just holding your own, like not really focusing on anybody else's journey. And that even applies to like track as an individual sport. Um, like you can't really compare yourself or allow your worth to be weighted on other people's perceptions of what you're doing, or like their ideas of how well you're performing in your sport, or like merging with your team, I guess. So I think it's just a matter of being able to focus on what you can control within your career and within yourself. I think that's a really big part of it.
That's so true. It's so hard, like even in life, to just like stay in your lane and focus on what you're doing instead of comparing. And I mean, I can only
Yeah.
imagine like in track, like you're literally probably looking at numbers and
Hmm.
basing majority of how well you're doing, if not doing like well at all on a number.
Yes.
So
And
how do you stay out of that?
well, I honestly I feel like I compare myself, especially being in college now, because I will say that my experience with track is far different from what it was in high school. I compare myself a lot to myself. Like now, the way I perform, I compare that a lot to like the way I performed in high school, or like the way I performed a year ago at this certain meet. Like it's honestly a lot of comparison against myself now, and that is like weird to work through because I'm like I am me. I don't know why I think I need to like put myself down because of myself and who I was years ago and whatnot. But yeah, I would also say comparing yourself to others, it takes away from your ability to be proud of what you're doing in your sport. And I think there's always something to be proud of. I mean, even if you don't feel like you're performing to your absolute best, there's always a win in it somewhere. Even if you don't do as good. Like and I like to think that a lot when I like perform poorly, I guess. When I don't perform how I want to perform, I still think like this is great because I can't when I lose, it makes winning so much more enjoyable and it makes it so much more like wonderful and I can feel the gratitude a lot more when I know what it feels like to not do my best and when I know what it feels like to lose a little bit. So there's a win in everything, basically.
I love that point because like I know as an athlete, like I really struggled with that. And right now, like I'm working with these younger girls. I coach a high school team and they're really young, like freshmen to juniors. And they make these mistakes and it's like the world is ending. Tears and frustration and just like, why am I like this? I don't want to be like this. Once the one mistake happens, everything good flies out the window. Like
Mm-hmm.
you can't even look at yourself and be like, oh well, this was okay, even though this was not good.
Right.
And I know like in basketball it's weird because, athletes are very tied up in certain statistics like no turnovers, more points, good game. So when they have tons of turnovers, 0 points, they don't always look off that stat line like you said into the other wins.
Mm-hmm.
Like how did I like crash the boards? How did I play defense? Like how did I cheer on my teammates? Like there's all these other
Yeah.
things like you said, and there's
Mm-hmm.
always a win in it. So you kind of mentioned like comparing yourself to yourself and that being like a weird area to be in. And I know for a fact, like, especially in college, in high school, you like jump every year, like tremendously from year to year. And then
Yes.
in college, you're like, okay, the same thing. Like from freshman year, I'm gonna like evolve to sophomore year, like, and then you're like, whoa, it's not as is so much more gradual and the changes are
Mm-hmm.
so much smaller and they're not in the ways that you saw in high school and
Yes.
that can like lead you to feel like oh my gosh like did I prepare, did I approach this right, like did I do the right things to be in a good position to be successful, because I feel just like I felt last year.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to comparing yourself to past versions of yourself, I think it's important to I need to be better than I was yesterday, or I need to find a way today to just incrementally grow compared to yesterday. And I'm more uptight about it. But how have you navigated like the comparison with yourself to, hey, I'm going to grow from myself in the past, but I'm not going to get so in my head if I do fall back into that, because ultimately that version of yourself isn't very far away.
I have since coming to college, I've had to give myself a lot of grace. And I didn't do that at first, like, especially first coming in my freshman year. You're right, like in high school, like you just improve every year. And coming to college, I figured like going off my senior year, I'd have another jump and I would be even better than I was my senior year. And that did not happen. And my first meet, I like panicked because I was like, oh my gosh, they recruited me here. They did so much for me and they believed in me and I'm not even performing like what I could perform in high school and I'm in college now. That was really scary. That's a very weird feeling because it's like, what am I doing? I feel like I worked more coming to college, and so to not see those improvements was really difficult. But I will say also coming to college, there's so much more adjusting that you have to adjust to so many things, not just track. And I think it all like works hand in hand. And I was very, very rude to myself at first because I was like, you should not be doing worse than you did in high school right now. But there were just so many other areas in my life that I needed growth in at that time in my life, and so many other areas of my life that um, I improved in that year, and it might not have been exactly track, but there was just so much more to it than that. And in providing myself grace and understanding that, like you said, it's going to be gradual. There's so much that is different when you come to college. I mean, like weight training was so different. That was insane. I was like, we are lifting so much. I don't know how that's going to affect anything, but so there's just so much change, and it's actually pretty common. Like, that's a very common thing in college. I mean, I could say that coming from a track perspective, I've experienced that with my teammates, but I think it's more like maybe it hurt my ego coming to college because I was like, I feel like I should be able to do better than I did before. So really, like, you have to provide yourself a lot of grace and understand that patience is needed for yourself, especially adjusting, like going from high school to college. It's just, you really need to be kind to yourself and understand that, like, it may not be right away like it was in high school and just randomly like it was in high school, but it's going to come and it's going to take more time, and not to panic because I definitely panicked a little bit.
I think we all panic, and I think when you walk in your freshman year, you'll have a lot of people say like, "Oh, it's freshman year, it's freshman year," like, and they kind of knock it like you're gonna struggle big time. You're like, "No, I'm not. Like, I'm fine.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do
Mm-hmm.
okay." And then you always look back, like you give it a year or two, and you look back, you're like, "Oh my gosh, like it was horrible, and I was a
Yeah.
mess," and like they were so right. But while you're in it, you're just if you refuse to give yourself the grace, like you said, and you just act like everything is good and fine, and then you find yourself breaking down and not being able to handle it, it's probably because you didn't give yourself the grace. And like you do, anybody going from high school to college, not to say it's like this giant you should be scared shock. It's
Yeah.
just it's just this thing where like you need to almost establish like, okay, I'm going to grow this year in these areas, and that is like the journey for the year versus,
Mm-hmm.
oh yeah, I'm good. I'm going to show up. I'm going to be ready. I'm not going to be like all the other freshmen. Like, you can't, don't try to do that because you're just going to like dig yourself into a hole. And I know, like, in a team sport, you show up and you're like, okay, I'm ready. And it sometimes, like in basketball, even, it doesn't really, you're just depending on a single individual, so your head coach, to, provide opportunity. Like, you can do everything in the world and be there, but I'm almost speaking to more just like, you know, a team athlete. But if you're going in there, you think like, okay, I'm so much better than A, B, and C, these people in front of me, or I prepared so well, I'm the best player that I've been in the past, and like I should like show up and do better than I ever did in high school. And you might not even see the court. Like, you might not even get the opportunity to play. You might
Yeah.
stand on the sideline all of practice, and how are you going to handle that? Because like you said, you weren't meeting your numbers your freshman year, and you're like, oh my gosh, like they're going to literally cut me from the team. I'm never going to come back. I failed this opportunity. Like, that's the worst thing that could go on in your brain. And the same thing happens in team sports is you probably aren't going to get the minutes. You probably aren't going to see the court. Some of your classmates might, some of them might not. Like, it's just a adjusting period when you come into your freshman year that like you have to give yourself grace, like you said. So I love that you
Mm-hmm.
made that point because it's so true. So true.
Yes. Yeah, I remember being really mad at myself at the first meet, and my coach was like, he's like, "Why are you so upset right now?" I was like, "What do you mean, why?" Like, he's like, and a lot of my coaches did tell me this. They were just like, "This is your first year. Your goal is to just adjust, to just get used to the way that college is and the differences um, college athletics has against like high school athletics." And so I was very grateful for my coaches because they were very comforting and just letting me know like you need to ease up a little bit. It's not that deep. So I'm very grateful for that.
Did you have your teammates that were the same way too, a little bit?
Yeah, it was great. Our we call it jump squad, or like the jumps team. They were so sweet, and I honestly feel like we get emotional sometimes. Sometimes we cry a little bit, and everybody just comes together, and we're like we lift each other up, which is amazing. They were a really huge part of me just being able to empower myself through that experience. So that was very important.
Yeah, team is so important, and like good coaches and leaders are so important. So I love that you had that your freshman year, and I think I
Yeah.
had that too in a sense, but it's sometimes it's weirder. I don't know, is when you have like 15 girls grouped together trying to do the same thing, but you have freshmen, sophomores, juniors, seniors, all moving towards like the same goal, but with
Mhm.
such different mentalities if it's not managed well. And that's something I find interesting about like a team sport, in the sense of like you have a team on the court that has to go perform, because if you don't communicate individual standards within the entire group standard, you get all this like unintentional assumption and like weird standoffish behavior from people when it's not communicated. So I'll look at like track. It is a team sport and it is extremely difficult, and it's like very high expectation and lots of, I can just imagine, stress every time you go to perform. The only thing is you guys have each other as a team without almost bumping heads on the sort of team things that you probably saw in volleyball even when you're in high school. Like, if
Mhm.
there like a relief when you went from volleyball to track, or like volleyball to gymnastics or anything, or did you feel it was pretty good in high school?
For me personally, I feel like it wasn't a super like tense experience with volleyball. I mean, here and there, it was a little bit of like, that's supposed to be your ball. You're supposed to get that ball. Like just a little bit of blaming, which I think was, I didn't experience a lot, but when I did, I was kind of dramatic about it. I don't know. I only did volleyball for 2 years, so that was like kind of hard for me to adjust to, but it wasn't that terrible. I will say I was relieved to get to like gymnastics and track because um, it's very like you based. Like you have to it takes a lot of self awareness and just a lot of self evaluation to recognize what you need to work on, and just like cues and whatnot. It's just very, and I love that about it. It is the self evaluation and the self awareness has become very important to me, also outside of athletics. And so I enjoyed that little switch and that dynamic switch from volleyball to gymnastics and track, because I'm very used to being able to assess like what I'm doing and what I'm controlling and what I am not controlling.
Yeah, that's so true, and I that's something I know. I've like in my last 3 years, like it's been quite the journey, but there's always this like weird sometimes with a team sport, or when you answer so directly to a head coach, like there's can always be this blurred line if there's not great communication on both ends. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's a unique perspective, but I have this. I wanted to ask you, you know, since you went from high school to college, and you said in college like you really changed and grew as a person. Not changed, but grew. What would you say, like outside of your sport, were two or three characteristics that you saw like flourish in yourself, and just like you began to grow in, that you hadn't necessarily paid the attention to in high school?
Well, like I said earlier, the grace thing. My freshman year was really hard because like I said earlier, I was really rude to myself in many ways. Like, and there were a lot of times that okay, so I guess this is kind of two. I'll just do two right here. Like grace and comparison, because comparison, I compared myself to a lot of my teammates and also my like classmates. I would constantly be like, my major isn't hard enough. I'm not studying to become a doctor. So like just a lot of comparison. And there were a lot of times that I would just feel like I was pretending to be like a good student, even though I was a good student, or like pretending to be like, I just felt like I wasn't actually being me. Like, it felt like I was trying to meet the standard that other people had that I created in my head. It's such a weird thing, but I compared myself a lot to other people, and in doing that, I was very rude to myself. I was very, um, I would just kind of pick at myself, and I would overanalyze certain things about myself, and that's where I started recognizing the need for grace, because I was like, I'm not on the same journey as any of these people, and we come from such different places. So for me to compare myself to them and expect that we need to be the same and have like the same experiences and react to certain situations the same, or just a lot of different things, like that is such a weird, it was a weird, once I was on the other side of it, I was like, that is a weird thing to do, because we're so different, and there are so many things that I've experienced that the person next to me hasn't experienced, and that is exactly why I'm the way that I am, and that's why they're the way that they are. There's just so many differences in our walks of life, and so then comparison became a thing that I was like, I cannot do that anymore, because we're just not the same at all. And so I would say comparison and grace, and then um, I would say the other one I learned is I really had to learn how to become, like, how to not be a people pleaser, I would say. My freshman year, I kind of experienced a lot of being like walked over. Um, and I experienced a lot of kind of going out of my way in ways that would make me not content and make me not experience peace in order to bring that to other people. And a lot of the times it was unnecessary, and I just kind of wouldn't speak up for myself. I would just put other people before my priorities and my needs, which at the time I kind of thought, I was like very proud of myself for that, because I was like, I'm just being selfless. Like, I just want to be there for other people, but I wasn't there for myself really, and I wasn't taking the time to recognize how that affected my identity and how I felt about myself. And it was hard to adjust to that and just kind of put my foot down and like say no to certain things and say no to people and reserve time for myself and make decisions based off of my priorities and my needs and not the needs of others. And so I would say I'm still kind of hardcore people pleaser, but it's much better now, and I have my boundaries. I learned how to set boundaries, and so I think that's another one.
Okay, before I address any of those things, how did you become reflective on this and understand these things about yourself? Because honestly, most people can't look at their life and understand this or see this or even comprehend the things that you're talking about. They might think what you're talking about is shooting for the absolute stars. Because the idea of giving yourself grace, holy cow, no way. Or the idea of not comparing, or just even catching yourself in the act of comparing and understanding that's what it was. You said the thing about the major. Is my major even hard enough? Oh my goodness. I get that so much. I was, not to go into my stuff, but I was a business major, just a business major. And people always and I went to a school my sophomore year that was primarily everyone was pre-med. And I was just like, I am such an idiot.
Yeah.
I think I'm so stupid. I shouldn't even act like I'm smart. And it sounds so stupid, but it messed with my confidence. And I even changed I changed my major to something more sciencey and stuff because I enjoyed it, but also I was being so influenced without even knowing it. And so you are addressing it as you know it and you see it, but how have you got to that point of noticing those things?
I honestly, I would say I've always kind of been hyper aware of myself and my emotions, but I would say getting to college, it was first of all, being a social work major, I will say, it makes me emotional talking about it, because yeah, I used to be very insecure about it, because I was like you said, so I had a roommate who was pre-med, and she was like, oh my gosh, I'm studying for this anatomy, I don't know. I was like, I'm over here writing my paper, enjoying it. I'm like, should I be enjoying but honestly, in social work, just learning about so many different systems and perspectives and theories that so many people experience was very helpful. But I would also say just the the experience I was having with myself and how, like, the effects of the way I was treating myself. And initially I didn't really know what was making me feel the way I was feeling, but like when I would be super critical about myself, I would always feel like really sad and disappointed in myself. And I guess I kind of just looked at that and I was like, this obviously isn't just showing up from like nothing. Like this obviously is rooting from somewhere. And so like I know when I feel joy, I know where it comes from and I acknowledge where it comes from and I extend gratitude for that. So like it's for me it's the same way when I feel something that isn't joy. If I feel sadness, I try to figure out where's that coming from and I or if I feel angry towards myself. And so I think that's what I first that's kind of how I first approached that. I was like, I'm not very proud of myself right now. I'm not very confident um in who I am and like what I'm putting out there in the world. And so in experiencing that, I kind of tried to figure out what that was and dig down and see where that's rooting from. And I guess that's what I found is like a lot of doubt and insecurities and comparison. Like I just had to, that's like a secondary experience. The shame and the like disappointment, that's secondary. It comes from some kind of emotion. So I just worked pretty hard at figuring out what that was.
That is so true, and honestly, like, I could talk to you for hours about that single thing because, like, literally digging to the root of things can be so hard sometimes when it's specifically coming to, like, being an athlete, because there is so much that can just be layered and layered and layered and layered over things, and, like, I know something that a lot of teammates and ex-teammates, because I don't play basketball anymore. Like I stopped playing in this October, and it's my senior year because I was just like, it's been a ride. Like, and I felt called to move in a different direction. But
Mm-hmm.
I talked to teammates, and they can't even get to the root of things because there's all these layers of comparison and blame. I think blame is so horrible, especially like I see it with a lot of like team sport athletes. Blame of coach did this or coach did that or coach like messed me up in this type of way. And once you get to that layer of, and I want to know what you think about this, where you like pass the blame for something, a behavior or justifying an action or a behavior because of so and so, you almost will never get to the root of something if you can't just take accountability or give forgiveness and just move through that, or you will literally stay stuck at that one thing forever and you'll have that doubt or fear or hate or bitterness or lack of confidence if you have any sort of layer of passing the blame or not taking accountability as you like try to dig to the root of things. Here's an example. So my sophomore year was quite hectic. It was chaos. It was crazy, and I could pass blame to the coach for this and that, and things that happened that were wrong.
Oh, okay.
And
Yeah.
there was things that I did that were stupid too. So you play this narrative of, well, this was my fault, but that was his fault. And no, well, this was my fault, but it could have been his fault. Like, did I actually deserve that, or was that like out of the blue? And you play this narrative game, right? And then I was sitting on the
Mm-hmm.
bus last year after listening to something, and I just literally took full accountability for everything. Like,
Yeah.
from then, like that sophomore year, all the way back to like through high school, because like I carried stuff from high school with me up until that point. And I just was like, okay, it's all on me. Whatever it is at this point, like it's my baggage to carry and work through and like deal with. And I broke through that layer of like questioning and blame and who was it or what did
Mm-hmm.
I do or where did I need to like apologize, where do they need to apologize, and just like literally giving myself the grace to be like, okay, it doesn't even matter, just take it for what it is and work through it for like what it is now. So did you ever
Mm-hmm.
experience, like, while you were getting to the root of some things, those layers that you hit and you're just like, well, I don't know, like, it's not mine to take blame for, or, oh, they owe me an apology, or, oh, like, stuff like that.
once I did kind of start getting past the like, okay, I'm being a little bit too mean to myself, it started to become a thing where I was trying to understand that, like, I would, or if I made a mistake or anything, I would really dwell on that, and I would be like, I would think about it so often. I would just think about it so much, and I would think about how it affected other people or how other people affected that mistake. Like, I assessed it a little too much, but I had kind of came to the conclusion that, like, and now I'm really grateful to say this because now I feel fully like okay with making mistakes. I don't feel like I'll fully dwell on them because in my freshman year, I would just so much disappointment, so much guilt, so much shame surrounding like mistakes or surrounding um my ability to accomplish certain things or my goals and whatnot. I had to assess that and tell myself that I'm allowed to make mistakes. I'm allowed to not be where I want to be, I guess, if that makes sense. I'm allowed to, like, maybe I didn't reach this goal. That's okay. Like, it's not the end of the world. And it feels like it is in the moment, but in the grand scheme of things, like, that I'm so, like, those are so beautiful to experience those mistakes and to experiences, though, or to experience, um, like, the shortcomings is actually such a beautiful thing because it teaches you something. Like in every single mistake that I've made, I've like it's made me who I am today. And so like in the moment, it feels like I don't know how I'm gonna figure this out. I don't know how I'm gonna work through this. But if you just embrace the fact that it's good, even though it feels bad, I think that helps move through that, and it also just helps you be more kind to yourself and to those experiences. Um, and so I think for me, it was just like this feels terrible and it feels like it's the end of the world and it hurts, but it's good to feel those things and it's gonna be good one day. So I think that's like a little bit of hope, I guess, kind of helped me work through those things.
I I love that, and I love how you are, like, sharing that and articulating that because it is you said it, like, it is beautiful. Those mistakes are beautiful, and, like, I can see the peace that you can look at your life, like, in the way that you're, like, viewing your life, and I hope and aspire to be more like that, and I hope that everyone that listens to this aspires to be more like you in that sense, because it's so clear that you put in so much work and so much time and so much effort into getting to the place where you're at now, but it is so recognizable. Like, I may have not known you, like, 2 or 3 years ago or known you in high school, but I'm sure, like, you are not who you are right now, and like you said, it's been a lot of work and a lot of time, but like it is so evident because you are like a walking example of like all the things that you're talking about. So I just want to address that, but it's like it's funny because you just circled back around to that beginning statement. If I was sharing about like the little high school girls that we have that will make a mistake and it's like it's okay, like life goes on, it's gonna move on, all these things are gonna be okay, but in the moment it's just like they can't see that beauty in it, and it's just like their world is ending. But like you said, it's just all the mistakes, all the things are like beautifully crafted. And if you don't meet X, Y, or Z, that doesn't mean you're a failure. And I have had to work through that extremely because when I set out to play college, I was like, I'm going to be at this school for 4 years and it's going to look like this. And I'm three schools later, 3.5 years later, and I'm not even playing basketball. Like, I look at it and I had prayed and prayed and prayed for peace like this year. Not for anything to change, just that I could like feel peace going into my senior year because it'd been so much turmoil and like frustration and all these like horrible feelings. And I was like, I just don't want to feel that way this year. Like, I don't care how that comes about. I just don't want to feel that way. And I literally woke up one day and was just like, okay, I let go of the expectations of I have to play 4 years. I have to get my like degree paid for on scholarship. I have to like play this sport. I have to do this thing. Like literally like God wiped that all away for me and I could just like you said like in my life in a way where hey, it's okay. like give yourself grace. Like literally
Yeah.
laugh at the last 3 years cuz it's humorous. It's not anything more than beautiful, like you said. And holy cow, like a week before that, I looked at them and I was like, I don't even want to look at that. Like I just gotta get through this year because that's what I said I'm gonna do. I'm gonna put my head down and like run through a wall to make it happen. And then, God will answer your prayers. And I woke up and I was ready to let it go, but and walk in that peace that you just like mentioned. And I really hope that everyone can get to that point, like on their journey, like in athletics and in life, where they can look at it and see that beauty in it. But when you aren't there, it feels literally miles and miles away. So I'm just like super appreciative of you sharing your message about getting there and having not always been there. So
Yeah. I also wanted to mention another thing. I kind of thought of this as you shared your story. Um, it's like it's really hard when you have an all or nothing mindset and like you have these goals for yourself and it's like if you don't reach like perfectly if you don't reach these goals, then you didn't accomplish anything. That is like I experienced that my freshman year where I was like, if I'm not reaching this, then I did nothing this year. Nothing like I didn't nothing good happened to me. But there's so many other like victories I had that year, and if I would have continued to think that way and think that like I have either accomplished everything that I have set for myself or I accomplished nothing, then I am completely ignoring like all of the different ways that growth was implemented into my life outside of that goal. Like there's just so many other areas to it, but it's really, especially being a younger athlete, it's easy to have that all or nothing mindset and be very like down on yourself when you don't perform the way you should. You were like talking about the basketball girls and how heartbroken they are and whatnot, and it's just so easy to think that in the moment, like you said. But yeah,
no, it's so true. The all or nothing mentality, coin it to the athletes. They're great at bringing that out of people, but
mm-hmm.
I think there's a balance. I think you can be all or nothing kind of person, but you're gonna have to understand like there's gonna be a lot of nothing. There's gonna be a lot of like success in how are you gonna ride the waves. Like if you want to embark on that, go for it, and you can be that
Yes,
type of person. But you have to you have to be so good at navigating it. And like I kind of one of the last things I'll say is, and I know you'll understand this, but you'll put your blood, sweat, and tears into something, right? And you'll feel entitled to that thing when you do that. Like you feel like I put all this work and time and all this stuff into it and it didn't go my way. Like, how dare you, world? Like I can't believe like I'm just a failure. Like, oh my gosh, like you almost feel, and I think athletes do this a lot, that's why I want to say it, that you're entitled to something if you put your all into it, but you're not. And that's where like the beauty comes into it, because a lot of times like that's going to be the story of your life. Like you should put everything into whatever it is that you do and then find that grace to navigate through it if it doesn't go how it's planned, because that's also probably 99% of the things that you're going to embark on. So I really appreciate you like sharing your story. And are there any ending remarks that you want to share?
just kind of on what you had just mentioned. Last year, I experienced a little bit of like you mentioned being entitled to like you put in the work for something and so therefore it's yours. With athletics it's so difficult because I feel like we don't talk about this a lot, but it's so possible that you can lose your ability to do your sport. And I had like a little bit of a glimpse of this last year because I experienced some injury within my shin, so I was out for most of my outdoor season, and that's what really made me like kind of scared me a little bit because I was like, wow, I'm really not promised this, and it was a little bit terrifying. But in experiencing that and understanding that there is a chance that I may not have this like forever or that I may not be able to complete my 4 years. I obviously we never know what could happen and I would never wish that on anybody, but in understanding that there's is a lot more to me than just this sport. And there has to be, because if I were ever to lose this sport, I would want to feel secure and I would want to still feel proud of my career, but also proud of who I am coming out of that loss. So
Well said, because you what you just said, people don't realize until And I'm one of those people until your senior year, and it's like slipping through your fingers. And you look at it and you're like, I literally don't know what the heck I'm gonna do with myself, or like
Yeah.
where my value lies. And I coin it all to like my faith and my walk with God, because He did something for me that I could not have done for myself, in regards to granting me that like peace and serenity to move on with it. Because I was never the person that was going to be able to just accept the things that had been and not feel like I failed. So, yeah, it's so true. So true. But it was awesome having you on. So,
Yes.
appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.